Notice has been posted, agenda adopted, okay. Please join me in our pledge to the flag, which we actually do have tonight, all right, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda. Welcome, everyone. We'd like to have comments from the audience regarding items for future consideration. This is the only time during this particular meeting that the audience members may comment on future or current agenda items, as this is the business meeting. So persons addressing the board are asked to state their name and address for the record, and their comments may be limited to only one time and only 5 minutes, but feel free to come before the board. Would anyone like to speak to the board tonight? Going once. Would anyone like to address the board? If not, we'll move to item 4, consent agenda. Tonight we will be approving A, approval of early graduation requests, B, approval of CISA 1 contract, C, approval of 2014-15 Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance resolution and agreement 66.0301, approval of the 2014-15 School District of Elmbrook 66.03 agreement, E, approval of HG&D, that's Human Growth and Development curriculum, F, approval of high school handbook, G, approval of middle school handbook, H, approval of organizational chart, I, approval of June vouchers and vouchers payable, J, approval of May 12th and June 9th, 2014 school board meeting minutes. Before we approve the consent agenda, would anyone care to pull an item out?
C and H.
Okay, C and H.
J.
Anyone else? And J. Okay, anyone else?
And F.
And F, okay. That should be it. Then I would move approval of consent agenda items A, B, D, E, G, and I.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Okay, let's review consent agenda A, or I'm sorry, C, approval of the 14.
It's more of a comment. I appreciate the notes that we got. That's very helpful. They're very insightful. So that's all I had was a comment. So.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on that? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approval of, for C, approval of 2014-15 Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance Resolution and Agreement 66.0301.
So moved.
Been moved,
Second?
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried. Item number F, approval of high school handbook.
Let me just find it here. There's a few swipes on this thing. I had a question. I was just trying to figure out the differences, and maybe I didn't get it opened up in time here, but I was trying to figure out the differences in the two-way electronic device communication stuff between what it was and what it is, and what we are. Oh man, where is it? As I looked through the different references in the policies, I was trying to determine. I'm still trying to find
The
the
before and after.
not A, the before and after, and B, if I can find the page in the. Hi, John. I'm trying to find that communication
The
page.
electron, the.
Let's see. Close. Two-way communications on page 49 of our packet.
Page 49, you said?
Page 49 of our packet, yeah. It's students who possess cell phones, photographic cameras, it's the second paragraph, with photographic camera capabilities, camera phones, are prohibited from using the camera on school property or at any school-sponsored events unless approved by administration or expressly given permission by an approved school supervisor. The rest is standard legal thing. My question is, so So by having this in there, does that mean that, like at a basketball game, whether it's home or away, that's an official school-approved event, right? So does that mean that somebody has a regular camera, they can use it, but if somebody pulls out their camera phone, a student pulls out their camera phone at 7 PM on a Friday night to take a picture at an away football game, they could get in trouble?
Do we have a high school principal here that could answer that?
The high school principal is at the Model Schools Conference, along
Okay.
with the ex-high school principal. However, it was changed, we did change that policy in the past year. Eric brought it forward to the policy committee, and this reflects that change. I haven't found it in context, but I saw it up on the cover sheet.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's the second paragraph.
Well, part of it is, except as specifically authorized by building principal or designated for medical school education, educational, or other legitimate use. In other words, if they're taking pictures at a basketball game, no principal is gonna say that's terrible. If you're taking pictures in the locker room,
Well, I
that's an
understand that,
issue.
but that's also illegal state, federal stuff.
Yeah.
As given by the last sentence of the second paragraph. But my question is, I mean, is that in writing somewhere that at these sporting events and stuff, that's allowed? Because if not, we're kind of leaving, I don't know, it almost seems like it's too much for me. I mean, it almost seems like we should have it where, except for where regular camera use is normally accepted or something like that, because otherwise we're singling out students, whether they're home or away, during school or after school, it doesn't really matter. We're singling them out as saying unless they get specific permission, if they're using a cell phone with a camera on it, if they're using the camera portion of a cell phone, that's against the rules. And it seems to me that it should just.
Yeah, there are a lot of, everybody does these selfies nowadays.
Yeah, so-
You have a point. I
You know
mean,
what I'm
it's
saying?
not,
I mean-
you have a
Well,
point.
could we-
Was there any specific authorization
Could we
for,
hold-
Sure.
Wait until I call on you so he can
Okay.
finish his conversations.
so
and-
was there any specific authorization, for example, for the graduation students doing selfies, 443.5, for graduation, the graduates doing selfies at the commencement? You see what I mean? So it just seems like if you want to look at it, then these things really need to say what we mean. What it means is unless there's a specific approval for a student, because they're using a camera phone as opposed to a Canon EOS or a whatever, point and shoot. If they're using a camera phone at a Friday night football game in Greenfield, and they didn't get specific permission,
Right.
the first, second, third violation, and so that kind of broad power kind of bothers me.
Okay.
So I'm just
Quinn,
trying to find out the source. I'm sorry.
comment?
I think he has a point.
Okay, so we're voting on this tonight, so you have we'll still vote on this tonight, but I think that it could always be brought up again at the policy committee, correct? Because that's our board policy 443.5. And my recollection of this conversation was that as long as we give building principals, because you're right, we cannot control every use of a device through a board policy, that we give the building principals the authority. And that's what we wanted this policy to do, if I remember correctly, in our policy conversation on this. That doesn't mean it still isn't right, but just saying. So any other comments on this particular handbook discussion?
I just looked up the policy, and it was revised August 26, 2013, so in other words,
Yes.
this past summer.
Mhm.
So I am confident in the principals that they're not gonna come down on a kid for doing something. But I understand you're saying, I really couldn't tell you otherwise.
Well, let me, I guess let me explain maybe a little bit more on where I'm coming from on this. Just as an example, every once in a while in the press, you hear about, some child in some faraway school district, some elementary school kid or whatever, just doodling in class and drawing a picture of a handgun or something and getting expelled because of the zero tolerance on a weapons policy, I mean, it's a doodle on a piece of paper. I think we ought to avoid pitfalls of giving ourselves in writing too broad of reaching thing. I mean, if we just put in something in there about specific you know, unless it's an event where normal camera use is anticipated, you know, that's all it would take. But otherwise, we're,
Nancy?
I'm sorry.
I mean, I understand John's point, but I don't think we can cover every little bit of thing, because now, does it say anything in there about taking pictures with iPads or things like that? Because, you know, now you can take pictures with iPads, and, I mean, I just don't think we can cover everything. And, I mean, I think we need to look at the intent of the handbook or the policy, and I'm fine with it, so.
I agree. I don't think we can cover everything. I think we're covering too much in the wrong direction with the way it's written, is what I'm saying.
I was
Comment?
just going to say that we have to bring the handbook to the board. If she's referencing, if policy is referenced there, then that's a policy question to be handled. But if you're approving the handbook is just basically, you know, saying move in that direction, or this is the policy that we're looking at. So we have been known when policies change to change our handbooks accordingly and not have to necessarily bring it back to the board for approval.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
what they're looking for now is approval of the handbook, and if the policy changes, then that would adjust the handbook.
Okay,
Any other
so,
discussion
So
on the
your
handbook?
concern would then be with the policy?
yeah, so let me just,
Hold on a second. I want to kind of go back to order at the board meetings. And John, if you would wait, let's let Jonathan have a chance to, any further comments on this particular item? Jonathan?
No, actually, that was just I agree with what Chris said. If there's a problem with the policy, we should look at that in a policy meeting.
Okay, and that could come up. And Nancy, and then back to John.
Well, if it's a question about the policy, we're not noticed to talk about that policy. I mean, we can talk about it as it relates to the handbook, but it really has nothing to do with approving the handbook or not.
Correct. And that could come up under other agenda items at the end, if you would like us to review that policy. Would that be all right? All right. Any other comments on the handbook? John?
it actually, I think, goes a bit beyond what's actually stated specifically in the policy.
Comments on the handbook, then?
That is a comment on the handbook,
Okay, sorry.
because
It's got more
as written
language
in the
than the
handbook,
policy.
it has more
Okay.
than in the policy.
So, any other comments on the handbook? At the moment, we're approving the handbook. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the high school handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Only two? Aye, three. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion fails. So the handbook goes back.
No, it
three of you
passes 3 to
approved
2.
Oh, wait a minute. Is it only three, or does it take four?
No, it's the majority.
Majority of who's here.
Oh, and I got my little Robert's Rules thing at home.
It is, it's the majority.
Nice
Well, all
spot.
right, I'm sorry. Okay, motion approved. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now we're into, so that passes. Approval, H, approval of organizational chart.
Yes, I would like to table this. I think there are personnel issues that we need to speak about, and we can only do that in closed session. So I think we need to table this.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I'd like to make a motion to table item H, approval of organizational chart.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I think we just vote on that then. There's no discussion. So all in favor of tabling this?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. We need your vote.
I said no.
Oh, sorry. So that motion fails. So the back on the table then is approval of the org chart.
Okay.
Sorry, did you vote? I didn't.
Then
Yeah, I said no.
Okay, then I have an issue with the dotted line from our academic, executive director of academic to our principals and to our tech director. I think they should be reporting directly to the superintendent. If the superintendent chooses to have information from the executive director of academic achievement, so be it. But I think the dotted line is not warranted.
Okay. Any other comments on the org chart?
Well, I think just to clarify, that dotted line responsibility is they do report directly to the superintendent, and the superintendent has direct authority over them, but it's a dotted line to the academic director because of the curriculum piece of it.
That's not reflected on the chart in a key. Yeah, I guess usually I see a key for something like that, so.
Again, I would wait
I'm sorry.
to be called on, sorry. Okay, John, now we
Okay, what I just said.
got it. Anyone else care to comment on this org chart?
I need a bishop's light so I can,
Yeah, you do.
So, John, to clarify what you were saying, you want a label on the line that the dotted line is going towards?
I don't know what it means. Like Quinn said, I don't know what it means. And Nancy indicated what she felt it meant. But I think an org chart ought to be self-explanatory. To me, that isn't.
Any other comments on the organizational chart? I just want to mention, this went through the Personnel Committee a couple times. It's really been back and forth between the Personnel Committee. I'm just saying we did have a chance to modify it several times. And I know all board members don't get a chance to come to those. That's why we have the full board, again, to be able to make the final decision. So that was my comment. John?
Okay, my comment on that is many of these things have gone through prior to me getting on the board, and yet now I'm the one
Exactly.
voting on it. So,
Exactly. I understand.
so that's why
Yeah, I understand. I was more for informational
Okay.
purposes that I mentioned that. Okay, any other comments on the organizational chart? Lowell?
I could just, originally it was a solid, just a history, Nancy can jump in. Originally it was a solid line, and they suggested making it a dotted line, so it's not quite as strong as the relationship to the superintendent. That's all the reason they did it, because there's still, the educator effectiveness piece of it, the curriculum piece of it, that's still very much under the executive director, and if it's, yeah, so that was the reason for the dotted line. And I understood it when it was
Right.
suggested, it made sense, so I went,
All right,
obviously, intelligently, I did what the committee recommended.
and now we have new ideas. Quinn?
So when you say they, who is they? The Personnel Committee
Yes,
suggested that?
yes.
so
Okay. John?
So my request is just that the nature of the dotted line be
noted.
defined.
Can you do that without a vote?
I can do anything the board tells me to
No,
do.
and I'm saying after this is approved, or do we need to put that in there specifically
We're actually supposed to do this every
every year?
year, I think. There's a policy on it. So we could always, it hasn't been done since I've been here.
So that dotted line indicates a relationship. And all I'm
John?
asking for is that
Right,
the relationship be defined.
okay. And I'm asking Dr. Holster,
As long as the personnel committee okay with it, I'd be okay with it.
we can modify that and just put a note on the chart, and then it's approved?
We'll put it on the next personnel committee agenda and,
Oh, bring it back through the whole process?
no, just to their agenda. It doesn't have to come back for approval. It's just a definition kind of thing. It just doesn't seem like a big,
Well, it's got to get approved here first.
Yeah,
Right.
can't you define it here and then,
Would the board be willing to approve this with the understanding that below on the dotted line, it will say curriculum?
in matters
We
of
add
curriculum?
in matters of curriculum. Would that work?
Is that your intent?
yeah, it sure could be. I can put it I would put it on the bottom like you said. like
Oh,
a
an
key.
asterisk, okay.
Is
Would
that
that
your
work?
intent in the relationship?
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, so we will, then I would entertain a motion to approve the org chart with an amendment to note that the dotted line between the executive director, and I'm going slow so Kathy can catch all that, of achievements, dotted line responsibility is curriculum related. Does that work? That language? Seeing yes, okay, I would entertain a motion to that effect. Approval of the organizational chart with the amendment that would note that the dotted line between the executive director of academic achievement to the principals is curriculum related. Would anyone like to make a motion? Seeing none, the motion fails. All right, so this has to go back through the policy committee again, correct?
Well, no, I can make a motion to approve the organizational chart.
Sorry. Robert's gonna get me yet. Okay, there's been a motion on the table to approve the organizational chart as is. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion then on approving the organizational chart as is, with the understanding, even though it's not noted, that that is a curriculum-related line? Any other comments?
That wasn't part of her motion.
No, it's not. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Did I hear Jonathan's vote?
I said aye.
Oh,
He said aye the
he's
first
so
one.
quiet, my
He's
ear
for it.
must not be good. So the
He's
motion
for it.
carries 3-2. All right, next item up on the agenda is J, approval of May 12th and June 9th, 2014 school board meeting minutes. And
That was me.
Nancy?
Just a tiny little correction that Stephanie was not the clerk in the May 12 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on the minutes?
The signature needs to change.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion with that slight change of Stephanie not being the clerk.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, old business, number 5. A, approval of district goal performance reports. This would be Dr. Holtz.
Would you take one and pass one to Frank, please?
Okay.
Pass one down. This is just kind of a summary, so it didn't warrant a full presentation type of thing, because the real presentation tonight, the new stuff, is going to be from Matt and Doug. So just a recap, 2 Mondays ago, our building principals and executive director of student achievement presented on the success we had this year achieving Goal 1, which was academic rigor and college career readiness. Goal 2 is focused on communication. David's sitting here. And on March 10th, David gave a presentation to the board on our district-wide communication plan. That board actually had seen an outline of it, and that was part of the purpose for bringing him actually in as well, because it fits so well. On April 14th, he did an update of the communication plan, making any revisions as suggested, and then on April 28th, the board approved that. The second part of goal number 2 talks about the feedback received through the forward thinking team, designing an action plan for presentation to the school board. Basically, the 3 things you agreed, or the 3 things that the forward-thinking team came up with that everybody could agree on. What are the 3 bullet points? Ensuring each student is adequately prepared for college, career, and life by effectively collaborating with a variety of stakeholders. Number 2, support student learning and family community engagement in the schools by mobilizing the expertise, skills, and knowledge within the communities and the districts. And number 3, providing children with safe, secure learning environments by effectively partnering with groups and organizations within our communities. Then the next step, or the part of the action plan for each board or council, was asked to sign a commitment. Our board agreed to that commitment, I believe, on June 9th, and that's all been signed. Goal number 3 is going to be presented this evening by our business manager and building and grounds supervisor, but I'm going to skip ahead real quick to goal number 4, which was focused on technology advancement. Eric presented on that throughout the school year a number of times, specifically on February 10th. He talked about monitoring, evaluating, and adjusting the one-to-one mobile computing at the middle school. And then on March 10th, he reported on 4B, and through that process, the board actually expanded the 4B to include grades 11 and 12. After these guys are done with goal number 3, I'll jump in with the summary on goal number 5, which is pretty neat because we have a lot of things that came out of that climate committee. So actually, we're on goal number 3. It's up to Matt and Doug.
We'll talk fast, so Cole can be up next. In the packet, you had some narrative about goal 3. As I was looking back over it today, I thought it sounds like a lot of whining on my part, but the reality is, since the revenue limits have been in place, that school boards have little control over either revenues or expenditures. As you can see from the first slide here, between taxes, state aid, federal aid, and interfund transfers, we only have about 3.5% of the budget that the board actually has any control over on the revenue side. So basically what we do is monitor that and hope that we've done a good job budgeting, because we can't really do much to add revenue sources in the environment that we're in. Expenditures, it's the same story. By the time you consider having all of the staff in place, salaries and benefits are almost 70% of our expenditure budget, and then throw in a couple of other transfers. Mainly that's the transfer every year that we have to make from the general fund to Fund 27, the special education fund, and the purchase services, which includes, for example, the utilities, all of the services that Matt contracts for, as well as transportation. Pretty well eats up all of the dollars that we have. We did have some good news that, I'd love to stand up here and take credit for, but really can't. Through the month of May of this year, a result of the change to the high deductible health plan is that our claims are running about $1 million a year less than they were at the same time last year. We've still got this month, and then the estimate that Humana will make for claims run out, but it certainly looks very positive for us to have saved significant money. And on the other hand, we had some unexpected increases in staff costs because we had some children that were not here prior to the start of the school year or very close to the start of the school year, and it was necessary to hire additional staff during the year to serve those kids. So we will be in the next month or so, as we get ready for the audit, reconciling those things to find out where we're going to end up in total for the year. Some of the things that we do to control our purchasing process, I identified for you. I won't read that off, but I am excited about conversations that I've been having with the bus company, and we're looking at making some changes in the transportation program that we think can save us about $85,000 next year from what we're paying this year. So we will be putting that before the Finance Committee in July to see whether it's a direction they want us to pursue or not.
Yep. And my goal 3B, update and prioritize the 3-year capital improvement plan that addresses critical improvements needed in district infrastructure. I thought the best way to talk about this slide tonight was just talking about what we've done over the last year collecting data. And now some of you have attended previous Finance Committee meetings, some of you haven't. Those meetings have really fed into this budget binder for our strategic planning that we created this year. This is actually the first one of its kind since I've been here, and I think this this plan is going to go a long way to help the board and administration determine projects to come up with the financial impact of those projects. We've had presentations at those committee meetings from the architects and engineers, and it was really the first time we've had everybody in the room, including Baird, where we looked at, if we're going to do this much work, how much is it going to cost? What's the impact to the tax levy if we do decide to do that work? And so that was a really great meeting. That information also was included and fed into this plan here. And so what we did with it, we created this plan. This plan, like I said, being the first one of its kind since I've been here, My goal for this plan is to continue to use it, to continue to make small steps with it until everybody on the finance committee and the board and administration is comfortable with it. And we'll just keep changing the plan. It's a living document as projects come up. If something needs to be pushed back in year 3 because of unforeseen expenditure or for, budgetary reasons to hold the tax levy, we may not want to spend $2 million in energy projects in 3 years. And so that's where it kind of works as a living document. That could be incorporated to a larger project or not. And we can keep adding and deleting sheets from this, giving all the board the history of how we've been going through our planning process. So it will address critical needs. It will, it addresses district infrastructure, and I really feel like we met the goal with this having this binder, which is why I brought it out here for everyone to see, because it is our tool that we're going to be using going forward. So I would say goal met.
Yeah, I've gone through it quite a bit, and it's got the information you need.
Yeah.
Now we just got to get it done.
Right.
You need to ask.
Yeah.
Ask first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does anybody have any questions for me on this?
Questions? Sorry, John.
Well, I just wanted to say, I looked through the book fairly closely, and I mean, it's kind of one-stop shop, and you put a lot of work into that. I'd looked through some spreadsheets and stuff with you earlier, and man, that's I like the product. It's nice. Do you have some way in mind for us to do page changes or something like that?
As we add and subtract sheets for this, I can just easily take the page number sections, update the contents page, and just hand out new sheets at finance committee meetings, and then the other sheets to the other board members can either go PDF or mail, whatever.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I have one before you switch. What I don't see is, I don't think we've gotten to the point of prioritizing, though, yet, what we're going to do for the next 3 years. That notebook is sort of a step toward that, or did you actually have a 3-year plan in there?
Correct. The final section, I think it's section.
There is a 3-year plan?
Yeah.
Then the board just didn't approve it yet, okay.
Yeah, and in section 8, I just have it listed as district priorities, and then it has safety and security instructional.
For 3,
And then that's that on this slide here.
I'm sorry, for the next 3 years?
Yes.
What's
That's
going to be done?
That's this copy right here.
Okay,
that's at
got
the
it. And that's
back.
been updated and it's in the book? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I did not remember that.
But
Thank you.
that document too can also be changed as Doug and I and the
Right.
finance team work.
And I think the board, yeah, that comes through the budget process next, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And, yep, that's just another piece, a tool that we use to tie it together.
That's a lot of great work. Absolutely. Okay. No other questions? Then we go to C.
Last slide that I have really isn't great in terms of lending itself to a PowerPoint presentation, but last fall, you can see it back in October, I put this list together because you can see we have, and it's probably not all inclusive, but it's the major firms that we have contracts of one kind or another with, and we've got board policies on purchasing procedures that indicate the frequency with which some things should be gone out for bid, and a number of these on here have not been bid for a number of years. Some of the services are the type that, I'd say, well, if we're comfortable with them, why do we want to make a change? Writing RFPs for things like legal services and audit services and all of those things are very time-consuming. But I wanted to get this back in front of at least the Finance Committee, see if they want to, if there's some things there they feel it's important to shop the market and give us the direction to do that, or if they're whatever they're comfortable with telling us to just stay the course.
So do you, excuse me.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you regularly, when a contract comes up, do you regularly RFP or request for proposals, or depending on the dollar amount of the contract, or what do you do?
A little of both. For example, you might remember we had to put the food service program out for bids a few months ago. That's a federal requirement that we do that every 5 years. Back in 2010 and 11, the district, in conjunction with a couple of neighboring districts, did an RFP for transportation services. And we've got this year and next year left on a 5-year contract that was awarded there. Let's see, we did last year the benefit services group, our health insurance consultant was done. Many of the others have not been since I've been with the district at least. So.
Yeah, and I can only chime in on one of mine up there, advanced disposal. We switched from waste management just as Doug was coming on board. There was changes with Viola in the landfill and trucking, so we changed our waste hauler because we saved money going with advanced on our monthly bills at the new school.
Because I'm sure you get hit on from, you get stuff in the mail and you get phone calls and let's just say the office supplies. Now, I get many things at home from Office Depot and Staples and the like. Do you investigate that, or are you comfortable with where you're at, or do you check their prices?
Well, for example, since you picked the office supply one, I'm told that we've had a long-time relationship with Bubrix. That doesn't mean that we couldn't contact Office Depot. The problem sometimes is in trying to compare, apples to apples when it comes to the supplies, but certainly we can do.
I'm not telling you to, I'm just asking the method that how you go about choosing what to do and what not, or just.
Sometimes it's a matter of the service level, Are you no longer happy with Humana, for example? Do we want to change? And I guess that's what I'm looking for, is some direction from the board, starting with the finance committee as to, what they want us to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? I would suggest that you make recommendations to the board on these items, rather than us just looking through it and just saying, maybe you should just look at this one. Because you're the one that gets all that information, like Quinn said, you get the solicitation. So if you're evaluating these, and I'm pretty sure we have a board policy on how these are supposed to be done, we should check that and just make sure that administration is following that policy. And if it's not clear on how we want that done, we should revise our policies. Because I'm pretty sure you do that on a regular basis when you get that information. If you have questions, then you can bring it to the finance committee and they can look at it and then bring it to the full board. So you guys are pretty, you know what you're doing. So.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add in, like, with my custodial stuff, we usually just look at, like, paper towels, garbage bags, the large commodity items, within, getting down to my level, that micro level. But we do look at purchasing. We don't have, like, a formal purchasing agent in the district that can really spend time on it, but I try to take the larger chunks of my stuff and at least see how much I'm paying per bag, with each vendor and things like that. Per ounce even, for cleaning out.
So,
John?
so what you're saying is you do spend some time comparison shopping?
Oh,
to
yeah,
try to
every
make
year.
sure.
Yeah, as I'm preparing my budget, that's when I'm usually getting my comparison quotes and things.
And I think that's all we're after, is that in the various items up there, if you're doing comparison shopping and you say this is the best we can do at the time for the level of service we get and that kind of stuff, so this is what I recommend, and that's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, and our Metro Buildings and Grounds, it's like a cohort group of all these guys in southeastern Wisconsin. We meet, and we have a lot of shared spreadsheets now in Google Docs, so we can really check vendors against each other, because Greendale can put what they're paying, I can put what I'm paying right here, and then we can just go look at it in a Google Docs for the service, and it really has added a lot of value, to the services that we get. So, kind of a forward-thinking model, but we just kind of do it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, next up would be goal number 5, school climate.
Again, would you pass one down to Quinn, please? And pass one down. Okay, this one is, while it's stated pretty simplistically, it was a good event for our district last year. Each building started up on the top of this with establishing a climate committee. So there was a high school climate committee, elementary school climate committees, middle school climate committee. And the charge of each was to research and recommend steps to enhance positive school climate. We then formed a district level climate committee with representation from each school climate committee. And again, that was the same charge, but throughout the entire district, from a district perspective. I go through a little bit of a history, but one of the goals that was established by that district committee was to make Whitnall a place where people want to be, where they want to stay for a long period of time, make this a district where we can work together and establish relationships. We want a district where it is a happy, fun place to work, where people work with each other, have a positive attitude, and we can continue to build up that excitement for education. As we were coming around the bend to the end of the school year, it got to be a bit of a challenge, especially for the ladies that are, and gentlemen that are teachers and principals in here, because it's like a race to the finish line, and there was some pressure building up. But what happened during the school year is the committee brainstormed a list of ways to enhance the climate. The list is A through F on there that we kind of focused on as the top suggestions. The one was more celebrations as a staff, and we'll continue to address that throughout the coming school year, but this year we came up with a year-end picnic and a cookout, which we hadn't done, at least during my tenure previously. And then we also did a year in review where because sometimes we forget all the great things that happened in September, October, November, and I was able to put that up on the screen, and even though people were stressed on that last day, there were still a lot of the when they saw the highlights and remembered what they did and what they could recognize for their contributions. They were cheers in the audience. Increase opportunities to help each other in areas of expertise. That is part of those teaching, coaching positions. And then also specifically at one building, we talked about there's a rotating time where they don't happen to have their common prep. And specifically, we're trying to address it over the summer. If we can address it, we will. Not for sure we're going to, but the principal is working on addressing that issue. Having a sink in all staff lounges, that was an easy one. Matt says, yep, I can take care of that, wherever Matt is behind the screen. So I went over and looked at it and made a suggestion. He goes, no, this one's easier, and he came up from the basement instead of through the wall. One of the priorities that they listed as a staff was to talk about reestablishing some of those early retirement opportunities. So we began those discussions with the board committee, and they were happy about that. Increase opportunities for flex time so that if they have to leave for a doctor's appointment or get a kid to something, that they can use a little bit more flex time. One of the goals is for the Business Education Summit. Teachers that attend that, they can use that as building up a kind of like a flex time bank that they can do those types of things. And then continue the sick day incentive. Every single building put that on, so they were very happy with the suggestion, which is kind of cool to see. So that's something you guys implemented a year or so ago. I think Nancy was the one who suggested it, and it ended up being a very popular suggestion. So for the first year overall, I think it was positive. I mean, it's going to be a while before we get to the point where right up to the last day of school, we anticipate some of the things. But I think it was a positive start, and one that we hope to continue for years to come. That's the Goal 5 report.
Questions from the board? Nancy?
So how, I don't know how to answer this. How was this committee, was it at each one of the schools? Did you have representatives from each of the schools? How'd that work?
Most of them were representatives from that school's committee. Some were, I don't think the high school was. I don't think the high school could, the people were, because they were involved in after-school things and those kinds of committees we have to meet after school. But there were representatives from each building. There were 2 from each building.
So each school has a climate committee, and then 2 representatives
Right, to
have
bring
the
ideas.
district-wide committee.
Yeah, because we actually did the survey back, so then after we brainstormed ideas, then I said, take this survey back to your building and have them prioritize, 1 through 5, and we'll see what we can come up with that we can do. Because one of the goals was, obviously, whenever you have a committee, pick something you can accomplish.
Sure.
Putting a sink in the teacher's lounge. We can do that, you know, it's not, we're moving the earth, but it was an important thing that just hadn't been done, you know.
And I know it always amazes me that something so simple is such a big, issue that nobody ever thought of doing, and so that's a good thing to do, an easy fix, like you said, so, thank you.
Other questions? I did have one. I thought that there was a survey done, correct? And did you mention that? You might have mentioned that.
Yeah,
And
it's
is that
in-
where
I didn't want to read this verbatim, but it's in here somewhere.
it was in here? Oh,
Oh, so they then took this list back to their individual sites where everyone in the district was given the opportunity to comment and make, and so that was the survey part where.
okay.
And they actually collated all the responses. I mean, it wasn't quite to the level where we went to forward-thinking listening, but there were pages of
Good stuff. What did
Yeah.
you learn from that? That jumps out that you remember?
people like to be heard. I mean, like Nancy said, if you didn't have the communication opportunity, I'd still be happily naive about something as simplistic as putting a sink in a teacher's lounge.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Any other questions? Seeing none, that will conclude our goals report for this year. And we move into strategic planning review. I asked to put this on the agenda because we have a 5-year strategic plan. And last year, we just never looked at it. I don't exactly know why. So I asked Dr. Holtz to give us an update and a report on that. And then what we'll do is we'll come back to looking at that for the future. So it'll help us to look at how do we want to set our goals in our strategic plan for the future? Because technically, this one still goes through 2015. But what do we want to do with that? Do we want to leave it? Do we want to change it? I also included for later on's discussion copies of our board policy on this. But I thought we would start with the review, particularly some of us, as some of us were not here when it got started. So where are we at on the strategic plan, and then maybe help us understand what happened last
Okay.
year.
Well, first, based on the concern in our last board meeting about some people not being able to find the strategic plan on the website, Kathy moved it to a more prominent place.
Haven't yet, I'm going to as soon as this meeting's over.
Kathy will be moving it. But if you ever want to see it, all you have to do is in the search bar, you type in strategic plan and it'll pop up. And what'll pop up is that presentation that looks like this, that we gave back in 2000. I don't know, I have to look at my notes to make sure I say it right. So anyway, we spent a lot of time on it, and there had been one that was in place for the 11-12 school year. Then in January of 2012, we worked out with the Public Policy Forum an agreement where they would come in and help us do another strategic planning event. We had a couple meetings. We broke off into the strategy meetings, and the result of that was, well, at the last meeting we had with, as the whole group, they modified the 4 strategies. We maintained the mission statement, we maintained the belief statements, we maintained the students' will statements. The only changes were in the 4 strategies. So if you look at, you have 2 documents in your, one right after the other that look something like this, and the one is from 11-12, the one is from 12 to 15. On 11-12, the first strategy was student engagement, strategy 2 was student rigor, 3 was communication, 4 was finance and facilities. The revision was, instead of student engagement, it became student achievement and career readiness. Instead of student rigor, it became district culture and climate. Instead of communication, it became effective internal and external communication. And then finance and facilities became responsible fiscal management. And then the goals changed then, which you can get off of that one page, which says for the, well, actually, it's probably easiest to see it right at the end, where it says strategy 1, student achievement and career readiness. That is actually the goal under that. Providing a Whitnall teaching staff who consistently design and deliver lessons and assessments aligned to Common Core standards and college and career readiness standards. You're right in that this has to be a living document because right now it makes reference to specific standards. which could easily be changed in the next 12 months. So that's one thing. District Strategy 2, District Culture and Climate, implementing a comprehensive transition program that effectively meets the needs of students and parents at all levels. So transitions is where people sometimes get lost, kids when they move from one building to another, those types of things. And then the effective internal and external communication, and they're pretty much similar. And the responsible fiscal management, Doug's always responsible, so that was an easy change. And as far historically, and maybe some of you, like Nancy is probably the one who could jump in, but after that meeting where we changed the strategies, then we had a goal-setting meeting where everybody was in here, and the administrative team initially wrote the district goals based on the 4 strategies. At that point in time, though, the board wanted to keep the 4 or 5 areas that they had for district goals, and so that's when it changed, and the focus went almost strictly on the district goals, and the strategic goals kind of got pushed to the back burner. They're all goals that we've, if not purposely, accidentally worked on. You know what I mean? District culture and climate, well, that was goal 5 on the district goals. So it happened to be part of it. Student achievement and career readiness, well, you just had a presentation on that 2 weeks ago. Effective internal and external communications, I shouldn't say by accident, but a part of moving forward, you know, sometimes the district goals reflected these as well. So, and David was a big part of that presentation. And then the fiscal management, that's been pretty consistent as well. So I can't say we like totally threw it away. It's just we don't focus on it as the strategic plan, we focus on it as the district goals. So how we move forward with that, that'll be entirely the board's discretion.
Okay. Questions on the strategic plan? So we have a good history of how it got formed. It was used for a couple of years. Actually, you created it, and then you created action strategies for 1 year. And after that, you just set goals.
Yeah, and actually, that was just a year ago. It's not that distant. Was it about a year ago? I remember Bernie going up there and writing the goals on the board.
We had set goals for, I believe, 3 years.
The year before that.
Right, and then
Last year, we modified them, but we just used those 5 goals. We didn't use the strategic plan.
But really, those goals are kind of the strategic plan.
Yes.
So, I mean,
That is
they're
right.
kind of one and the same.
But,
Okay, how does the rest of the board see that, John?
well, that's what I wanted to sit down with,
Well,
And then we'll come back, John, and then we'll come back.
it's okay if he wants to.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to sit down with Dr. Holtz, or I guess our historian, or something, and try and figure out, I mean, it seems like we got goals in this document, there appears to be some overlap. I just wonder if we're starting to, I mean, I'm confused. Is it because of me, or is it because of multiple documents and language, or what? So I wonder if there's some redundancy here that doesn't need to be, whether it's more documents than necessary, more, in a sense, document projects ongoing, like the strategic plan and the district goals. I think maybe for me, I need it simplified into
All right.
either there needs to be 2 sets of documents, or maybe the district goals are part of the district plan and can be actually folded into it more simplistically or effectively or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for.
Good. Okay. Quinn?
I happen to agree with John that we've just got too much out there. Now, these, you know, what Nancy said, but these are a lot more explicit in what they're talking about as far as the goals that we have. So then they're put on the back burner, or they're out of sight on the website, so we don't reference them. But obviously, there's a date to them. And are we gonna, is it through the 2015 year or the beginning of the 2015 year? That's not clear. I think we as a board need to decide, are we going to continue this?
And that's why I put that on the agenda, so that we can have that discussion. Now that we know the history, we can that'll flow well into, let's make some decisions then about how we want this to look in the future. And I put a draft timeline in you for purposes of discussion at that point. Are there any other questions? I hated to put music in the middle, but we didn't want to make music wait. So I apologize for that. But any other questions about the past strategic plan? Then we'll do our music discussion, and then we'll come back to deciding the future now. Any other questions about how this was formed? And seeing none, then we will move to the discussion on the music, new business A, 4th and 5th grade instrumental music program updates. Dr. Holtz, I guess you have a report for us on that? And then we'll go back to goal setting.
At the meeting, we had Chris, Lori, Chris Nowak, myself, David was there, Margot was there, and then a lot of parents, well, maybe 6, 7, 8 from HCE, and maybe 1 from EES. But it was a good discussion. I mean, because the ladies that were there, and it was all ladies if I remember right, but they were very much a part of that PTO group that does a lot of the collaborating within the building. And so it was good to have them there to hear their perspective. And we talked about, well, the principal started out by giving the history, how kids get recruited, how they sign up, how the sign up works, how they're scheduled. The principals then talked about the challenges of pulling out of classes, why that's a problem. Chris Nowak, we had more of the music department lined up, but one's wife is going to have a baby any day now, and he didn't think it would be politically correct for him to leave. So he didn't. But they basically talked about our goal is to institutionalize the changes by making them curricular. And there was a lady there, and I forgot what her name was, but she was really good as a historian, because she talked about when they took it out of the curriculum a decade or more ago, it just decimated the program. The numbers went from in the hundreds to 60-something, and the name escapes me.
When you say that, what was taken out as a curricular part? Mandatory band or what? What was taken out?
The band part itself, and I obviously wasn't here that long ago, but it was
In
an
elementary?
emotional, no, in the high school.
Okay, so we are talking elementary, 4th and 5th grade here.
Right,
And
and so what I said was, this coming year is a transition year. The baseline is, we're not going to exclude any kid, okay?
So 4th and 5th grade was never in the curriculum. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is really hard for me to follow.
No,
this.
there's never been 4th and 5th grade in the
Okay, so,
instrumental music in the
Okay,
curriculum.
so-
Other than the general Peter and the Wolf,
Okay.
this is the flute,
so keep going.
kind of thing.
Sorry, now that I'm clear about that.
All right. So anyway, their goal, and I told them that the music department, we haven't done a K-12 curriculum review in music for as long as anybody could remember. So it's due. And so I basically gave the music department the opportunity to sit down. So Shannon Glow, who, when you go to watch the concerts at HC, she's the music teacher there. Barb McDonald is at Edgerton Elementary. Margot is the instrumental for the most part at HCE. She also does some at EES, or did in the past, or never, ever? Okay. And then all the way through the middle school and high school as well. And as a music department, I want them to basically design what's the best K-12 music curriculum you could have for a school district like us. And then the goal is for that to be presented to the board in January for approval for then the following year. And then that means this coming year is a transitional year. There were some challenges with the number of, well, first of all, we want to avoid pullouts if at all possible. And if we have to have pullouts, we want to target certain areas. So the discussion with the parents was, maybe we'll do 4th grade strings before school. That would free up, or as many as we can before school. Not all of them, because they probably all wouldn't fit. Some after school if they can. But if a parent can't, all they have to do is contact or check a thing and contact the principal and see if they can work around it. Because we still will maintain Margot's schedule throughout the day. Hopefully, she'll have some free spots at HCE where she can do participate in some of the other planning and, if needed, help out in other areas. But it's one of the teachers who hasn't had as I looked at her schedule, and it's pretty obvious that there's no prep time in there at all. For a teacher, how you guys let us get away with that is beyond me. But, I mean, she's a very dedicated person, obviously. Well, once I saw that that wasn't in there, we need to at least give her some time, free time as well, to work on some of these things she's doing. The parents seemed pretty satisfied. I suggested we do a follow-up in September after the signups go out. The majority of parents were HCE, I said, and the majority of the PTO was there. I said, let's just do a check-in kind of meeting in September, invite me to the PTO meeting, and Chris Nowak, and we'll say what our status is, where we are. And then the principals did a nice job of talking about why it's a challenge if you pull them out of a regular class. And we won't get into that here. I mean, you saw most of the stuff. And the parents understood that as well. Our goal is not to reduce the program. Our goal is to grow the program. They saw that, I think. So overall, it seemed to be a good meeting. And everybody was heard. And they threw out some good ideas for us to consider.
Questions, and we'll start with Quinn.
I happened to be at the first half of the meeting, and there was a lot of good information. The criticism I have is this meeting should have happened 2-3 months ago. I think if we would have had that communication, a lot of the grief and misunderstandings and rumors would not have happened. I think we really need to look at how it was communicated to the parents from start to finish and learn from it. That's it.
Any other questions or comments? Jonathan?
So Dr. Holtz, my concern in talking with different parents and even the conversations we've had already is, you stated again that the high school program is decimated when it was taken out of the curriculum. We've talked about ways to possibly integrate it back into the curriculum. We have a strong feeder program now through the elementary schools. If we're talking about reinforcing on the high school level, bringing it back into curriculum, are we then chopping out our legs by making this change? So a strong feeder program is moving up to a high school level where we're thinking about changing it back to curriculum, but if we're changing on the bottom, are we creating a disconnect then?
What they're supposed to bring to you is a K-12 curriculum. So the entire program from A through Z.
Understood.
That's not until January.
So that, not until January. So we're not doing anything to reduce, we're actually increasing the opportunities for parents to sign up for lessons.
Okay.
Before, they could only sign up in this 2-hour block, and the kids would have to leave their art class. And one of the parents said, they have a shy kid, and leaving was an issue for them. And so Margot did use some time to do a group of kids during recess. She would have some of them bring their lunches, so she built in as much time as she could. And what we're doing is expanding her time, so we can actually fit more kids in. And hopefully when we pull them out, until we started talking as a group, Chris came up with this one, I believe. When we redid the special schedule a year or two ago at the elementary, you needed a 4th slot to make it work, and we put in library and tech time, kind of as a filler.
Okay.
Well, if you're going to pull someone out, that's not graded time. That's not curriculum. It's not required. That's the first choice to pull groups out of now.
Okay.
The second one would be music. It's still a challenge when she's getting ready for concerts,
Sure.
Shannon or Barb. But they understand the fact that it's a transition year. They also know that they're going to be at the table representing the music part of it along with the instrumental part.
Yeah.
So they'll have the opportunity to say, yeah, this works, no, it doesn't. And so you have a nice mix of really veteran teachers and some newer teachers that will be able to sit at the table.
Okay, thank you. John?
No, I agree
Sorry.
with what
I thought you had, go ahead.
I agree with what Jonathan was saying, was that, it's got to be it just makes more sense to, when you're trying to bolster the upper level program, to not sweep the legs out from under the, it's a good point. So that's what we're trying to do, so we need to strengthen it how we can. And so you are working, in a sense, on like a parallel music curriculum kind of thing at the elementary level for the following year, or
Yeah,
that's one of the
it's-
ideas?
The whole thing will be, and one of their goals is to put instrumental in, almost like you have options in math,
Mhm,
algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, that kind of stuff. So, and I can't say what they're gonna come up with, because I'm not dictating it. I want them to come up with it, because they know the music.
Within the guidelines of the state requirements and all that.
Right. And, the Quinn's point, absolutely, this should go out before any other information goes out to parents. And, so the intent wasn't for this information to get out until after, and it specifically said in one of our documents that David had the opportunity to work with the principals to craft this kind of document that I ended up sending out after the fact. So we'll do a better job of containing that information for the future, so that we get that information out to parents, because one of the questions from parents were, we could only do before or after school, and the only document I sent out said, are we open to other ideas for students to have lessons during the school day? I said, yes. Now, maybe that wasn't as direct as it could have been, and this kind of, the face-to-face thing is ideal, because it gave me the opportunity to clarify it, them to say, is that what you meant? Yeah, I could say, yeah, that's what I meant, and that's why we're here tonight. So overall, it was a very informed and involved group. It was small, but it was a good core group that I'm sure will help get the message out in a positive way. And I told them if I ever suggest any changes for the school district, I said, I think I'm going to start with the HCPTO.
And go ahead, finish it,
Nancy have
Nancy.
something? Go ahead.
Nancy?
Well, to me, this whole concept of having individual lessons during the school year is a very uncommon thing for me. I mean, I've never heard of this before, other than here at Whitnall. It certainly didn't happen when I was in school, and so I don't know when this started, or my son was not musically inclined, so he certainly didn't participate in that, and quite frankly, I don't even know if they had it at that time, whatever. But, I mean, is this a common practice at other schools in the area, that they do this during the school time?
We did talk, some do, Greendale, Franklin. What happened with ours, though, is it grew so exponentially. It grew so fast that when you look at, one of the goals, and from Margot and the parents, were you don't want to have more than 3 or 4 kids max in a group lesson. And so this, and I blacked out names, obviously, she is full. I mean, there's no more places to put kids. And so we had to expand opportunities. And because it grew so much, if you're pulling 15, 20 kids out, you can kind of go under the radar a little bit. But when you're pulling 80 and then maybe 90 or more next year, it really makes a much bigger impact. And it's time to improve the program, and that's what we're going to try to do. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We want to keep that baby floating, but we want to make it even stronger.
I mean, hopefully these kids will continue and, on their way through the high school, but I don't know, just to me, it was just a really foreign concept that we would even do this, so.
Every elementary I was a principal at had a band, but we always had the kids come, and they were pulled out during the day, during recess and or lunchtime recess, or before and after school, like a 0-hour kind of thing. But depending on how your buses work, sometimes it works for some parents, some for others, so we're going to try to be as flexible as we can.
So my comment was about your previous comment about Quinn's comment. You guys are taking notes. So You with me?
Right.
So rather than, I don't think, for me, it's not so much containing the information, but it's when an idea to change something gets started, maybe that's where we get community meetings or parent meetings or something like that going, because we've had, I can just think of the big flare-ups in not too distant past about school realignment, early release, those kinds of things. And then people think, well, we didn't know we were going to get that much response. So we would know if when these things first come up, we start discussing them out there, we would know what, and then we can start finding out what the issues people would have with them are, and then put together at some point we have to make the decisions, but rather than making the decisions and then going back and revisiting them, or at least what appears to have been a made decision in some of these cases, and then we go back and revisit it. So I just think that getting the ideas of what we're looking at out there earlier in the process might alleviate some of this, is what I would put out.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll just add that, the question running through my mind sometimes is, first of all, I'm glad we finally got some meetings scheduled and got more information out there, and because boy, did it really fast mistruths get out there. And, talk of charging fees, and I got emails within a day from past students who totally had it wrong. And no one understood why the change. If we have to make a change, the question in my mind is it going to be a top-down change? Or is it going to be more of here we have a problem, how can we creatively solve these problems when we do have some experts that see the problems that we don't see? So what my experience has been here and what I see happening now is it's more of an engaging process. You lay out the problem for our parents and our teachers, and we'll find a way to solve it together, collectively. You just can't communicate, as my colleagues have already said, enough, whether it be through meetings, emails, David being involved now with our cool Facebook and Twittering and textbooking. Texting. There's so many ways that our kids, right? Textbooking. I can tell I'm still old school. But there's so many ways our kids communicate, and we got to use all of those methods then to get the word out. I'm delighted to hear there will be a follow-up meeting in September. I'm delighted to hear we're going to look at the whole band program, because there have been concerns about the whole program. So all of that moving forward sounds really good, and I want to particularly thank all of you here tonight for coming to the meeting, for the additional work that you've done, for our teachers and principals who make it happen on a daily basis, and then even more challenges come around. So I see good things coming out of this. I say we fail forward. It's kind of my motto. If it doesn't go right, let's make it better in the future. So with that, I think that'll wrap up our 4th and 5th grade update. Thank you, Dr. Holtz. Let's move on to goals. All right. Thank you. Those of you that were here for that may want to, although you're always welcome to stay.
Right.
Okay, so moving on to our district goals. Let's take a look at some ideas on, try to summarize what we want to do. I just put together a very, very draft timetable, but I do, as your fearless leader, fearless learning leader, put together a draft agenda that we might want to look at, because looking at the future, last year we were setting goals, what we thought, if I remember right, was coming late in the year, correct? We want to get on that a little bit sooner, and we want to have, according to our policies, and good practice, our goals should be driving our budget. Our goals should be driving our personnel decisions. If we can, as a board, make that link, we will be less concerned about the operations of the district, because we know we're controlling the destiny of the district, the direction of the district. And that's why I think this is so important that we hammer out, and why we have really good policies around how our goals are supposed to be set, and when they're supposed to be set, and how they're supposed to be evaluated, and how they're supposed to impact the district. So our policies lay it out pretty clear as to how we're going to do that. So here was a draft timeline that I thought we could, as a starting point to talk about, because there are multiple documents out there, and I don't know what happens with the strategic plan. Also, which wasn't mentioned, was the fact that we went out and listened, and it was mentioned under the goals, but as part of this goal setting, we do have the forward-thinking data now that we can use in our plan. So how do we make this all work? What goes away, what stays, and what needs to change? So what I thought we would do, we all hear probably a lot about being data-driven. On July 14th, we thought we've wanted a data retreat, so to speak, for the board. That could be our data look. And then, let me walk this through quick, and then we'll go back and discuss the whole thing quick. So we would do that. My suggestion would be the board could determine what our student performance indicators that we want. What's important to us to monitor and to set goals around in this district. And then we've got the forward-thinking data, which really is almost a step above that. And then my recommendation would be we could use maybe some of the people from the former strategic planning teams where appropriate, but that we would create a district-wide leadership team that has cross-functional people on it that would work with the board to set and achieve the strategic plan, if we call it that in the future, if that's what we want to call it. And then if we do that on July 21st, it was a suggestion that we do a strategic planning session then, additional board meeting, because in our board policy, it says we're supposed to do this, have mission, beliefs, strategies, and district goals. So I don't know if this is pushing it too fast, too soon, but that would give us a chance to review those documents that are currently in our strategic plan, say yay or nay, what needs to be revised, what doesn't. And then possibly by the end of July, approving district goals. And these are district-wide goals. These are not building level goals. These are big picture goals that drive changes. Then the building level can go back and when they get back and they look at their student achievement data and set their goals for the year. So I would love it if our principals would chime in on this discussion as we get to it. And then August, you would take that and the action plans come back to the board once you engage the staff with the timelines and the specific actions and a procedure for review. Based on each goal, when are we going to see progress reports on that goal? So, and then that would all be presented in September with our strategic planning. Okay, comments. Now, John, wait, Lowell first, and then we'll go to John.
But I'm okay with John.
John first?
I was just wondering about what you actually read it. I think the way it was supposed to be written is to that second to last line under July 14th, to work the board or work with the board. I wanted to know what you meant, work with the board, I think.
Work with, thank you, yeah.
That's how you said it.
With the board to set and
I want to
achieve.
work with somebody.
Work the board. No, with, collaboratively, we would.
Okay, then I understand, thanks.
And then,
Go ahead, Lowell.
okay. Mine was under the same thing, but creating a district leadership team. I'm taking you thinking like when you looked at those strategic plan, that PowerPoint, there were leadership teams for each one of those areas. So it's correct, each strategy or whatever. That would make sense. I don't think we called it that because the district leadership team is the admin team, and then we have a set of a teacher leadership team, a district-wide one. That works then with so we have leadership teams all over the place. But this one would be specific to the goal setting and the strategic. If we're going to maintain the strategic plan, which I get the feeling that's the way you're going, that would fit perfectly. So that we just have to, because those people that were involved, I forgot what they were called. When you had your strategy teams, remember? Because we had parents, students, community members, yeah.
Okay. I forget what they were called, but anyway,
What was a while ago?
they were committees around each.
Yeah, around each one.
Around each goal. Okay, Quinn?
So we are going to create district goals as a board?
District-wide, those are the big,
And then you said, and then the principals will bring their goals in accordance to the district goals?
aligned with.
So that's different than we have done in the past.
sort of.
This past year, they brought their goals to us.
Last year, yes.
Right. And we are going to do this when? The 21st?
That's a draft, because I haven't even checked schedules. But it would be my suggestion we do it in July, if possible.
Well, I mean, we're gonna meet as a workshop type thing?
It would be nice if we could.
The workshop is on the same day as the school board meeting, so.
Right, the 14th and 28th, so it'd have to be the 21st.
Right, as part of the school board meeting, we're going to incorporate the data part.
Okay, as part of the school
As
board
part
meeting.
of the July 14th.
Right. But I'm going down to approve
And then the
28th,
yeah,
approve
the
district goals. When are we
That would be part of
gonna
the
create?
board. That would be part of the board
We're gonna
meeting.
create them right here at the meeting?
No, they'll be created, hopefully between the 14th, we'd look at data, hopefully the 21st. Or an additional meeting somewhere in there if we need it. If not, we bump this back. If we can't schedule it, we'll do it on the 28th.
It does seem tight for me.
It does,
I go work out of
ambitious.
town occasionally, you know, and
right? Okay. Lowell?
Actually, I appreciate Luann trying to do this, because remember the discussion on vacations, and after the board said I should take a week's vacation, I did, and it goes over the 14th. But the administrative data review, you guys have always wanted that data review, and we haven't, God bless you. For the most part, that's Tony and the principals, and Tony's really the data guru. So that would be a great time to really go into it more, and then go into more of the forward-thinking data, because I've been involved a lot with both of those. I mean, so, not totally to the level Luann has been, but I've been at most of those forward-thinking meetings. And then deciding how you know, the strategic planning, I understand what she's saying, because in the past, the principals didn't set the goals. The board set the top goal, you know, whatever the title of it was, like school climate, and then the principals or the admin team would say, okay, here's a measurable goal underneath there. And then the board approved those measurable goals and then went forward. This is kind of like that. The board sets the strategic goals, and that's like the big umbrella. And every building underneath that, their goals are going to align with that. And as the person that, one of my first goals is that the district goals are met, I can pretty much guarantee you that then the principal's first goals are to make sure that the district goals are met, because they're the people I work with. So it's an umbrella kind of thing. So you guys set the philosophical direction. I think that's what Luann is looking for. And I know we have some examples from other districts too that do that. And then each building underneath there sets their building goals underneath that umbrella.
And actually, it could drive changes at the central office as well.
Oh, yeah.
It could, depending on how these come out. Okay, I'm sorry. Other questions, Nancy? Jonathan? This is ambitious. The question, and then what about, what do you guys think? How does this look to you, and what's your feedback from a building level perspective? Does this work for you? How do you think the board should set goals? What do you think about that? 'Cause when you use the word goals, it means so many different things to so many different people. So I specifically stuck with district, I tried to put the word wide, district goals, not building level goals. What do you think?
We've always tried to align our goals to district level goals. As long as we've been here, there have been, we've had achievement goals, typically they've been in reading and math. They've always been, or at least for the last several years, almost since we've been here, SMART goals with action steps underneath them. Very similar to the strategic plan when we started, they were SMART goals with action plans underneath them for several years that we were checking out to make sure that we were doing all the things that we said. And part of the educator effectiveness that we're under also requires us to do building level goal setting, which we are accountable for, connected to achievement, which would then be connected back to, I would say, district level achievement. So it makes sense. The timeline will be, as we're now having to do several hours in this educator effectiveness training, It would be nice to give us the time to be able to get through that training this summer so that we kind of know what our expectation is for goal setting from an administrative standpoint. So,
We definitely need the school learning objectives so that the teachers can then set, their
Classroom level
objectives, so.
that all should interconnect.
It should, and so, and there's a timeline for their approval of their SLOs, so, and I don't have that date off the top of my head, but it's, September.
Are they school-based or is that student?
Student-based, so we would have to have our set for them to be able to think about connecting.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I like about hearing that then is we've done some listening already. So it seems to me an easy way forward for this year is to still have a planning session and look at the data that we've already got, look at the forward-thinking people who we involved, and rather than starting from scratch. I think we have good data that we just need to get our arms around. How do we set district-wide? What goals do we want? What does this board want for this year to drive change? And what do those look like? I would like to just be a little critical here because a lot of these goals are things we're going to do anyway. Of those 5 goals, fiscal responsibility, fiscal control, and discipline, that's operational and we need to do those things. Our administrators are going to do those things. Should those be district goals or do we want to focus on the mission? Start there and say, that's our mission and we may need to tweak it. And if that's our mission, what goals do we know gets us to our mission, which is all about students? And do we want to focus more on those? These operational things are going to happen. Technology is going to happen. We know that Eric will put together a new 3-year plan at the end of next year, and the board will approve that. It doesn't have to be a district goal. And I'm just planting some seeds for us to think about because
The board may approve it.
the board will, may.
Otherwise, it's just give them a rubber stamp.
And maybe that's okay as long as we know that those plans that they're doing are connected to the district goal that we said is important. And I'll throw out some suggestions. What if we, based on the forward-thinking data, say that every student is college and career ready, and then you break that down, which is one of our goals, into giving us some data. How do we know that every kid is college and career ready? What internships and real-world experiences are we setting up? There's some things we could just zero in on this year that we can say, based on the stuff we heard, what about safety, bullying and some of these things? There are 3 broad goals that forward thinking has set. And how can we engage our community more in our kids? Those are very different kinds of goals than saying we're going to be fiscally responsible, we're going to communicate more, which we are. We've made progress in these areas that we've set, so I'm not saying that was not a good thing, but looking forward now, how can we set goals that we know are achieving the mission and that they can use, and then we can learn maybe from you what those student learning outcomes look like. Are they aligned with what the board says is a student learning outcome district-wide? Okay, so let's get feedback. We'll start with Quinn. Move on down the line
So-
here. What do you think?
We need to have the goals in place prior to school starting.
Something.
Well, the teacher's goals, I believe, are October timeline.
Okay.
Typically, we have been setting our goals during the summer so that they're in
Right.
place before we start the school year.
So you would need us to give you the big picture before you set those goals, correct?
It would be nice to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And,
We have been.
okay,
We,
and the one piece of data that's never in our discussion, I don't say never, but gets alluded at times, is the ACT scores,
right.
because of when we get them back. I mean, we had our high school principal here giving us update, last meeting, and we, how are we doing? Well, that chart really didn't help me a lot.
Right. That's where the data piece would be helpful on July 14, is talking about what data makes sense to us and what doesn't. And then when, during the year, do we get a chance to look at this stuff? It doesn't have to be all at one meeting. In fact, I like it better when it's spread out in a timely manner when we get the feedback, frankly. I think that makes sense. But that would be mapped out on the 14th of July, hopefully with the help of our administrative team and you guys and a collaborative discussion. So then the question is, do we want to do a July 21st deeper look, or is there a better time? Some boards set aside like a Saturday morning. I know we're busy and Mondays seem to work out best, but now you're kind of new, and Jonathan, I don't know what works into your schedules. I'm totally open for changing how we do business so that the full board can step back and take a look at these goals and really get our arms around how can we set them in a way that aligns with the educator effectiveness stuff. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well,
This year, you're absolutely right on target as far as ideally, they're in place before the school year starts. Educator effectiveness is one of the most teacher frustrating things I've seen over 30 years in education. Our teachers literally have to spend 10, 15 hours in front of videos over the summer so that they can be here, and that leads to frustration. And they aren't being told what's going to happen second semester, because we don't, as principals and administration, we don't know, because what is happening is the state is designing educator effectiveness, the expectations, like, yeah,
Exactly.
maybe a month ahead of what has to be done when it has to be done. And
I just went on the website and it's down right now for revision.
Is this a spin-off of Common Core?
no, this was part of the, but it was part of the agreement for the waiver, the NCLB waiver. So it's just a poorly designed thing. And so that's why when he said October is when the teachers have to do it, they pushed it back from beginning of the year to October. My anticipation is, once they, hopefully by not this coming school year, the following year, they'll know what is happening, and they'll be more in line with the start of the school year rather than October, where teachers have to say, this is my, the student learning objectives that I have.
And anybody in evaluation has to do about 40 to 60 hours of videos before a certain timeline is seen as well. So we have a learning process that we need a dedicated period of time to try to get that in. And the teachers need the time to be able to do that. And then I think we'll all have a little bit better understanding about what our expectations are going to be. But the state continues to roll things out, and they have a little colored chart of when things have now been decided, or whether if they haven't been decided yet, or they haven't even been talked about yet. And once things move to, I believe, purple, then we know that it's a decision that's been finalized. So we're constantly looking at this, making sure to see whether these things are finalized or still in discussion. So it is frustrating. And for the teachers, we try to put a process in place that is at least making them less nervous or frustrated than what maybe some other.
And they actually also have the opportunity to adjust the SLO by some point in January, should circumstances that they designed it be, have changed, which sometimes will happen between, the first one and different assignments, and then something new comes into their radar. So that's can be a bit of a moving target as well. Teachers. In an ideal state, yes. I don't know if we're living in an ideal state right now.
well, yeah, changes, yeah. Sorry, did someone else have their hand up? No? So how does the 21st work for everyone? And John, you're a traveling guy, so is it better to do 2 in a week and try to see when everybody else's schedule works? Or do you want, is the 21st
2 in
gonna
a week
work?
if it's the right week, otherwise we're missing both.
Oh, yeah, it would be a board week, right.
Yeah.
2 in a week. How about the rest of you? Instead of the 21st, do you want to do another, we are going to have 2 the first week in July because we have the superintendent's evaluation tentatively on there for the 9th.
I would say, while I'm thinking about it, I would say that, again, my I think I need to start with, I mean, the strategic plan has goal number 1, goal number 2, goal number 3, and then there's the district goals of number 1, number 2, number 3, and 4. I need to, what I need to do is probably spend a day of not using the word goal at all, and then just to flush my mind from it, and then start trying to decipher, you know, exactly, because they're at different levels, you know, of different levels of involvement in how we go about getting business done and what we want to do.
There are,
And we've got to, I think we have to start with trying to.
Noisy, sorry.
Very nice. I think my
that
time is up.
I
meant,
also have two members that are
John's-
not.
Yeah.
right.
Sorry, time's up.
No, I just think we need to figure out what we're, look at all this stuff, spread it out on a big board back there or something like that, and figure out how it integrates
Exactly.
or it doesn't integrate, how it
Right.
falls under each
We
other
might
or
need a
something. and just
facilitator, a
figure out what we're
trained
looking at to begin
facilitator with an agenda.
Nah, it's
For
getting-
that meeting,
that's
we
almost
might
getting
need-
too much in the weeds. I mean, that's almost getting too organized. I think we just need to lay it out there and figure out how it all
We
fits
need an
together or
agenda.
doesn't fit together first. That's what I think we need to do.
You don't want to be too organized, huh?
Well,
Okay.
I brought one color tonight, man.
In preparing for this discussion, I did hand out, the Center for Public Education continues, our National School Boards Association has a center that looks at what are effective boards doing around the country, and goal setting is a big part of that. Big part of that, and it's becoming more challenging, though, to figure out how you set those goals that are around student achievement, because boards in high-achieving districts are more likely to engage in goal setting and monitoring their progress. They're data savvy, and they possess knowledge of their district, which we spend a lot of time learning about our district, but we just need to get better at the goal-setting thing. So, I did put that in your board packet. We have resources, but I think, like you said, John, I think what we need to do is really spend the time. Here's our mission, does it work? Do we want to revise it? Here's the beliefs that we established as part of our strategic plan, do those still hold? Because that's what our board policy says we should do. And so we would look at the mission statement, the beliefs, then what strategies, we could drop that word. I'm all for dropping that word, or leaving it. Are those the board, because the word strategies to me is confusing as well. And then we could say, well, what are then our district goals with some sort of an operational definition of what we mean by that? You know, like broad, student-focused, whatever kinds of, you know, come up with a definition for that.
I think we're starting to get into the weeds beyond the scope of your agenda item.
No, this was my agenda. It's right here. It says, this is what our board policy says we're supposed to do. Missions, beliefs, statements, district goals. And I'm getting confirmation
Okay.
from you that you all want to look at those pieces. You do, right?
Oh, I do want to look at the pieces. I just
wanna
thought
look
it
at
was
those pieces in
goal-setting
July.
process and timeline.
And then we will, no, I'm sorry, right there. And then July 28th, if it's possible, we would be approving some sort of goals. Do we want to try that? Can we work in an additional meeting in July, 2 additional meetings? Or do you feel like that's too much for this board?
Maybe too much for my schedule, but
The rest of
I'll
you?
try to do what people want to do.
I think it's pretty quick to get it approved.
Mhm.
I mean, usually, you know, we'll set goals, and then we do a couple revisions, and then, you know, they finally get approved. I think that's pretty fast.
Well, if we didn't have forward-thinking 3 broad strategies to sort of look at and react from, I would say, yeah. We would be starting from scratch, that wouldn't be near enough time, but we're not. We're looking at past district goals, what we set, we're looking at forward-thinking stuff, and we're saying what works and what doesn't. We can simplify the process.
I still don't think that
I'm all
having
for it.
goals on the 21st and having them approved on the 28th is
That's maybe too
too
My-
fast.
My opinion is it's too quick.
Well, that's, okay. Do we want to, how do you want to do it then? If you don't want to do it this way, you got to give me some guidance, because we need to get something in place so these guys can set some goals for the future. In fact,
I mean, I think that could be our goal to have it that way, but I just don't think that in reality that it's going to happen that fast. You know, who knows?
we're
It could-
willing
it
to
could, but,
try.
yeah.
We're willing to try. Let's just try it and see how that goes. Is that okay with you? Well, I know it works with you, it's just a matter of what time, when could we meet then? Whose schedule works, when can we meet? And there's 2 board members not here, so we can't really set that, so can we get Kathy to work on that? So we'll have our data meeting on the 14th, leading up to, from the data meeting that should answer the question, how are our kids doing, right? How are our kids doing? How's our district doing? What are the key measures that we want to be looking at? And how do we assess that? And are we all on the same page on how those assessments work? That's the 14th. From that, we should have a better sense. You know, then we'll look at the forward-thinking data. Wait, no, we're also looking at that on the 14th. At a regular board meeting, a committee of the whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then Nancy, Kathy will work with the board to try to set a date for after that,
When are you hoping to have that meeting?
within the
that
next 2
workshop?
weeks,
So you want to have that workshop between the 14th and the 28th?
right? If you can get it in. Well,
Just in case, because of the summer schedules, you could work it, I mean, the 28th, you have a board meeting. Typically, that's the board meeting that is much shorter than the, I mean, this is atypical tonight, because we had all those presentations. But we could maybe do, if not enough people are present, and I know you want as many as possible, you could bump the 21st to the 28th and do it right before the actual board meeting.
Sure.
And then push the board meeting back, which we haven't done before, but you could say board meeting, or do the board meeting first and then do that second. And then the worst case scenario, you'll have a good idea, you know, a consensus walking out of there, and you officially act on them then on the 11th of August. Which gives my group
that works?
that.
That works for everybody? Okay, that works. So it's on a regular night, so, okay, that sounds great. And then we can talk again. We can talk again about the rest of this. For now, any other questions or comments on the future and setting our goals for next year and the timeline? I'll go ahead, well, you got that all in the minutes, right?
Sure. Nod and smile.
So, we'll, call me tomorrow, we'll double check to make sure that all came out right. But let me summarize it. July 14th stays the same, that looks good. And July 24th, now it gets moved to the 28th, and maybe we'd start that meeting at 6?
School board meeting?
Right. And we would spend an hour, maybe even, depending on what else you have on the agenda, maybe an hour and a half on, I would think we would need an hour and a half. 6 to 7:30, and then school board meeting could start at 7:30. Take a little break there, 7:30 to 8:30. It's a long night, but that would be maybe easier than additional meetings.
Or start with the board meeting at 6.
6.
And then that should be done by 7, and then you can drive how long
You
you
can
want to
stay
stay.
7 till 10 then. Well, bring your pillow. Okay,
Sleeping bags.
we'll work out those details. Pizza. That sounds good. Feed them and they will come, right? And then we need to talk about who we would all involve in that process as well. All right, any other comments on this? And then August 11th, we would be approving. I think I've got it. That's it. Thank you all. Very good. Next up on the agenda are comments. Number 7, comments from the school board regarding agenda items for future consideration. Would anyone like some items for future consideration? I want to mention, I know we had safety as an issue. That's still out there. We have to work that in. Safety, the question, and what else? Were there any other ones, Kathy, that we have?
It was just the safety issue, but you had combined the safety issue with.
the resource officer.
The resource officer report, so you were gonna have the resource officer report and then a discussion of, safety after hours in the buildings.
And
And the best
anything
time to
else?
do that might be after we do that big training with Greenfield and the Greenfield Police
That'd be
Department.
great.
Corners Police
That'd be
Department.
great. When is that?
The date is right after teachers get back, so it's that
August?
that August Institute.
Is it on the calendar?
No, because it's, no. not
Okay.
yet. I mean, I know when it is, it's just in a file. in there.
Any other items for future any items? Seeing none, we'll move to board member announcements. I did want to remind the board, or maybe Kathy could send out a little email, because Jonathan, I think you're the only one that wasn't there. We set a tentative date to evaluate the superintendent. I did hand out updated forms for you tonight. I had Kathy make you all a copy. I just plugged in the district goals into what was a blank sheet before, so that you can now actually use that form to each individually, well, I don't think I want to get into too much discussion here, but just to each individually come up with your thoughts on that. And then the superintendent's job description was missing a couple pages, so I apologize for that. So now you have, there are like 6 characteristics, or what are they called in there? Standards that I wanted to make sure you all had a copy of that.
We have more things we're supposed to do?
More things. Yeah, forget that vacation. No. Okay, so that, I just wanted to point out, I handed that out. And I have information from WASB. Sometimes the board president gets mailings. I just wanted to put that out there in case anyone wants to see what our organization does. This is their annual report. And since they sent it to me, and anyone who'd like to look at that, please do. With that, I think that's all that I have. No other announcements? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.